they can't hear you. Can you turn on up or unmute yourself? Yeah.
Good evening, folks. Thank you for joining us this evening. I call September 17th, 2020 meeting. We were just in executive session to discuss issues related to collective bargaining and litigation.
I just want to mention that we now have a lot of people saying that they can't hear. Again. We hear you. Well, you don't hear us. Somebody answer these folks and tell them we have a meeting.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Do you need to unmute me? My mute button is on.
I just asked you to unmute.
Can you folks hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yay. All right. Sorry, folks.
Getting the microphones down.
All right. So welcome, everyone. We were just in executive session. And I'll read this again. Open it up. Oh, there's... Sorry. Okay, that's all right.
One is muted and the other is not.
All right, sorry. Now I have to. Sorry, folks. Computer is slow. Does someone have the agenda readily available? Okay, thanks. The agenda won't open. Does anyone have the agenda written? Thank you. Thank you so much. Oops, sorry. Alrighty. Thank you. Hopefully folks can hear me now. Thank you again for tuning in and for your patience. I call to order this Thursday, September 17th, 2020 school committee meeting. We were just in session to discuss issues related to collective bargaining or litigation.
I'm getting messages that we're echoing 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
Everyone in here must be on mute.
Yes. Oh, but I still hear myself. And a lot of cricket noise.
How about now? Is that better, folks? I hope. Well, how about now? So we were, folks, I hope. So
I'll get rid of one of them.
okay.
Teachers were struggling
Ay. I know, we're all thinking it.
Anime, do you want to tell people that we're working on it?
Yes.
That we're
All right.
23, that it echoes.
Okay, just join audio. All right, hopefully folks can hear me. I am very sorry. But let's try this for the 5th time now. I call to order this Thursday, September 17th, 2020 school committee meeting. We were just in executive session to discuss issues related to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, specifically the Medfield Teachers Association, Units A and B. At this time, we are going to have a reorganization of the school committee, and Dr. Marsden will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the one time during the school committee year that I chair the meeting for just one person to be elected as a new chair. So this will be very quick. I'd like to entertain a motion for a chair for the Medfield School Committee for the 2020-2021 school year.
I motion to nominate Jess Riley as the new Medfield School Committee chairperson.
So we have Jess Riley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I will go to a vote. Roll call vote. Anime?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Leo?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Okay, Jess, you can run chair. Congratulations.
All right. Moving over.
Great.
Oh, wait,
So do we nominate the other folks? Yeah. All right, and
You know, I hate to say this, and I know everybody we still have a huge audio problem. I don't quite know what's wrong.
all right, so should we finish the nomination and I'll log out?
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll kind of move
So
on from there.
I motion to nominate Leo Brem as vice chair.
Second.
Roll call vote. Jess, you call the roll call vote.
Aye.
Tim Knight.
Yes.
Megan Glenn,
Yes.
Leo Brem,
Yes.
Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke, aye. And I nominate Megan Glenn as financial secretary.
Second.
Seconded Leo. Jess Riley,
Aye.
Tim Knight,
Yes.
Megan Glenn,
Yes.
Leo Brem,
Yes.
Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke, aye. And I nominate Tim Knight as recording secretary. The
I
second.
second.
Second, Megan Glenn. Jess Riley,
Aye.
Tim Knight,
Yes.
Megan Glenn,
Yes.
Leo Brem, Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke, aye. All righty. It's in your hands, Jess. Welcome. Passing the baton.
Okay. Do we want to see if we can make sure that this stuff?
Yeah.
I can.
All right, we are working on the audio issues. Folks, I'm going to move over to Anna Mae's seat and we will see how this shapes up. I'm sorry for the echo.
Should we just stay? Do you want to move? Okay.
I would suggest
Yeah, I just, yeah.
everything that's on that.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Man. Okay. Give me a moment. I just got a new job. So thank you very much. And thank you, Anna Mae, for being such an able and incredibly stable chair for the last 2.5 years, 3 years almost. So at this time, we invite public input. Citizens at this time may address the committee on items of school business not on the agenda for right now. The committee will take such items under advisement without action at the meeting during which the item is presented. And I'll give you a minute or so to type into the question and answer if you were able to do that. All right. Let me make sure that I'm not missing anyone. I have one attendees. Ann Bowen, can you please type it into the chat? I'll give you a minute or so to do that. Oh, there you go. All right, we are not taking questions right now on remote days. We're going to do a presentation later on the agenda, and we're going to ask people not to ask questions about remote learning or kind of re-entry until that time. So please don't stack them into the question and answer either, because we're going to make sure that we use your time as efficiently as possible. Thank you. So, Leo, do you want to kind of dismiss those, and we will take questions about remote learning afterward, but we are not taking those right now during public input for non-agenda items. So anyone else? Alrighty, great. Let's move on to new business. And now I'm echoing. Does anyone know why that is? No? All right. I'm sure they'll let me know. And Kristen is now saying, oh no. All right. So I'm going to have to actually, we will take care of the, we can actually hear the audio problems that you guys hear. So you don't have to let us know. It actually kind of does clog up the question and answer. And I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And Owen is working very hard on making sure it works. We will not get to anything. I shouldn't be muted. Okay, good. Great, great, great. All right.
Madam Chair, I would ask that we go out of order on the agenda. There's no other new business that was posted since the 15th. And if we could go right to the school reopening update, that might, I know a lot of folks are here for that, so maybe that might be a good use of everyone's time.
Yep, I fully agree.
So, so there's a couple of things I wanted to share. One is in your packet. First of all, I do want to share that we had a great first day. I mean, obviously there was some traffic issues around a couple of schools at dismissal, but it was so great to have all the kids back. Teachers were so excited. I got to visit all 5 schools today and got into a lot of classrooms, and the kids were really excited to be there. Teachers were excited, and it was just real positive energy within the district. Looking forward to tomorrow, and then our cohort A coming on Monday. Within your packet, you have a couple of items I want to share prior to the presentation. I do want to update the committee on the device update based on what we needed to do to provide our students with devices so far this year. So the following breakdown devices have been issued to date. So far at Memorial, we've issued 140 iPads to students. At Wheelock, 136 Chromebooks. At Dale, 102 Chromebooks. And we were able to purchase the staff 275 MacBook Airs. Now that was really based on a lot of the feedback that we had after the spring, because there were a lot of issues with the Zoom calls. We had Chromebooks for some of the staff and they weren't having success with them. From my perspective, in meeting with other districts and other superintendents, the districts that had MacBook Airs and that used Zoom really had no issues at all. So we looked at that. Owen was able to get a great price on those. The staff just got those last week and have been using them, and we've had training as well on that. So it does take a little to get used to as someone that went from a PC to a Mac. I mean, I go back and forth multiple times a day now, but when I first went to a Mac from a PC, it does take some time to get used to. So we offered 7 different times for training for staff during the PD time, and we have support for them as well to get used to that. In terms of devices in all the schools, at Memorial, each classroom has now been allocated 10 iPads. So we have enough for just about almost every class, and the hybrid is around 10. There's a couple that are a little larger than that, but we have enough for each class there. At Wheelock, each classroom has been allotted 13 Chromebooks, and they used to have 5 Chromebooks before. We wanted to make sure that we gave enough technology and allocated technology for our Wheelock kids as well. At Dale Street, each classroom has 13 Chromebooks. And in Blake, for the first time, we have issued the 6th grade students with all Chromebooks. If you remember correctly, we've asked parents to purchase iPads for kids at Blake for many years, and that has started to become an equity issue. We had, I think, about 30% of the iPads purchased in the last couple of years we purchased because of folks that needed them or that weren't able to buy them at that time. So we felt like with the amount of money that we were spending with the 30% of iPads, we could outfit the entire grade in Chromebooks. So that's what we were able to do this year. So that was almost 200 Chromebooks given to the students at Blake. So Owen and his team has done a phenomenal job making sure that our kids are ready for our hybrid model. The principals met with parents, and any parent that had a concern around devices requested that to the principals. They passed it on to Owen, and we've been doing a really good job the last couple of weeks to get all that information out there. So I just thought that was important to kind of frame where we are with technology. We'll give you an update if and when that changes, if we allocate more Chromebooks or iPads for our students. But we are definitely outfitted, and our kids are ready to learn in this hybrid model. Owen, if you could let Christine share her screen, that'd be great. Christine Power is here. She and I will be doing a presentation really to take a look at an update on our reopening plan. And as soon as she gets that up there, we'll start. If you remember, we did our reopening plan presentation on August 6th at this school committee meeting. So we had a full presentation that night. I want to say we had almost 400 people attending through Zoom that night. I think it was 378 is the number I have in my head around that. So we went through the entire plan where we looked at the educational piece. We looked at the cleaning protocols, transportation, everything. So this is more of an update on where we are with this plan, and to also discuss some of the concerns that have arisen since then. So Christine, next slide, please.
And I just want to remind people.
I just want to remind people that please hold your questions and do not enter them into the chat until you hear the entire presentation from Dr. Morrison and from Christine, so that we can make sure we use your time efficiently. I think you'll hear a lot of your questions answered.
So we really wanted to take a look at a couple of things and our goals in this presentation. Review the timeline to provide the context of some of the technical issues and address the concerns that have surfaced. So we are acknowledging that there are some concerns that folks have. We've gotten feedback from a lot of high school parents and some others around what that model looks like. And we also want to address the concerns and set the stage for going forward. So I think we really want to spend some time on this tonight and dive deep into some of the issues that we've got feedback on. So from my perspective, I'm going to look at some of the timelines that we had in the summer and some of the things that we've done in order to get to this opening where we are today. So we did plan development and we had building-based teams, a district advisory team, in 10 meetings in the month of July. So our focus at that point was really to look at an in-person model, a remote model, and a hybrid model. And that was what the state had told us we had to do. So we got that information from the guidance. We're required to submit that to the state by August 10th. And what we did with that group of almost 90 people, we wanted to provide what we thought was the best learning experience and the best plan for Medfield. So that's what we were working on, and that's what we came up with, that plan that we presented to you in August. We had several leadership team meetings after those meetings and in conversations with the union leadership. And it's important to recognize these weren't formal negotiations, just conversations with the leadership and the direction and what we're looking at in terms of the three models. So looking at July, on the 9th of July, I sent the COVID-19 update number 18 to parents, and that was the first parent survey to kind of gauge and get a sense of where people were in terms of what will your preference be as we look at going back to school in September. We tried to create a consistent model for communication. So we started back in March with the COVID-19 update number 1. We've recently sent out number 24. So we felt like that was a really important piece, that if we put that in the subject line, it was an email from me, a message from me, and we highlighted the fact that it was a COVID-19 update, that folks would go to that. So we tried to keep that consistent pattern during the entire process of COVID-19 and where we're going. So we had a school committee meeting on the 16th, and then on the 30th, COVID-19 update number 19 was sent to parents, and that was parent survey number 2. So that was where you had to choose a model and get a sense of what your preference was. And if you remember that correctly, we articulated in that survey what it looked like for in-person, what it looked like for hybrid, and what it would look like for remote, and gave an explanation of those three different models. And then we wanted to see where people were in terms of their transportation. So if we looked at the actual language that was on the survey number 2 on the 30th, we put in there, will you utilize bus transportation to and from school this year? This decision will assist us in planning routes and the number of buses needed for the school year. Choosing yes reserves a seat or seats on the bus. Choosing no does not allow the use of our bus service. The current restrictions limit our full-size bus capacity to only 24 students. So we tried to get an idea of where people were, because in the original one that we did in the beginning of July, we didn't have a lot of participation for the buses. So now we had, at the end of the month, we had to start nailing that down, because in order for us to plan for a whole new bus schedule that would utilize only 24 seats instead of the 72, we had to get a pretty good sense of where people were. So that was, what we did on the July 30th COVID-19 update number 19. Okay, Christy. Looking into August, we had a really busy month, as you know, looking at not only having school committee meetings, but having the approval of our plan, getting that set, and then we started in earnest the negotiations with the Medfield Teachers Association. So our reopening plan was completed on the 4th. We had a school committee meeting on the 6th. We started negotiations with MTA on that same morning, and then negotiations continued on the 12th. And then we had update number 20, update number 21. If you remember, update 21 was a survey of students of Massachusetts teachers and administrators. We're trying to get a sense of what that cohort C might look like. So we asked folks that if they were a public school teacher or administrator in Massachusetts, and they would like to look at a cohort C model for their child, to give us their names and information. So that's when we gathered all of that information. Continued with negotiations on the 14th. COVID update number 22 was on the 18th. We had school committee on the 20th. And then on the 21st, if you remember, we had the opt-out. So we had established the hybrid that was in our plan. The school committee voted to approve the hybrid. And then we had an opt-out survey for folks that didn't want to participate in the hybrid. Continuing in August, negotiation sessions on the 21st, 25th. School committee had 2 meetings on the 27th. If you remember, we had an executive session earlier in the day, then a regular session, and then negotiations on the 27th, and then negotiations again on the 31st. We start to get into September. We had a school committee meeting on the 3rd, negotiations on the 9th, school committee also on the 9th, negotiations on the 10th. On the 11th, the school committee votes to ratify the memorandum of agreement. We had 2 meetings that day, if you remember, which was last week. We had a executive session at 3:30 and then a public session at 5 o'clock. We sent out COVID-19 update number 24, and then 9:15:20, the teachers ratify the MOA, and we got official notice of that at 7:01 p.m. On the 15th, which was just a couple days ago. So I think it's the context of this, and the reason why we're sharing all this information is to provide, some of the reasons why folks are feeling the way they are. So we're going to get to that, but I just want to show you what the timeline was. At that August 6th meeting, the first slide that we put up there was, at the end of this meeting, some people will be happy, others are disappointed. No solution will satisfy all students, parents, teachers, and staff. So we were very clear about that on that day, that there's a lot going on, and there's no way that in this reopening plan, however it gets implemented, will satisfy all members. This was our plan as of August 6th, and we learned one thing, that things can change quickly. We may need to adjust. Many aspects of this plan will need to be collectively bargained with the Medfield Teachers Association, and work still needs to be done with some of the day-to-day details. So we were very clear from the start, because I did get some feedback that folks didn't understand that things need to be collective bargaining. So on the plan on page 5, I explicitly put that in my letter to the community, that all that need to be collectively bargained. I know that on my August 14th COVID update, I mentioned it there. That was sent to all parents. And I know that at this meeting where we had almost 400 people, we shared that as well. So it's just, we want to get that word out there. We want to be clear that all these things had to be negotiated and bargained with the association. So I want to think about some of the important takeaways from that timeline. We all know that PR 101 is that you under-communicate, it causes rumors, speculation, and doubt. That was never our intent as a school district, but I think it's unfortunate, but we need to be clear with people that the school committee, the teachers union, none of us could publicly discuss or share any impact of negotiations of the reopening plan from August 6th until September 15th. So that's a big gap of time. And I understand that the frustration, I totally get the frustration. Jeff, why are we just finding out on September 16th when school is just starting? Why didn't we know this before? I think it's really important to know that we had a time frame from the 6th all the way from August 6th to the 15th where we could not publicly communicate. And if you remember, all of our communications were executive session when we were talking about this. So I don't want folks to think that we were doing this purposely. And I recognize the frustration, but that's an unfair labor practice if we start talking about this. That's how collective bargaining works in Massachusetts, and we can't just publicly say what's going on with the plan. So that was a really important piece that I want to make sure folks understood. And I'll also say that with collective bargaining, there are some parts of the collective bargaining, some parts of the MOA, the memorandum of agreement, that people in this room don't love. And there are some parts of it that the teachers don't love. But I think that's collective bargaining, and that's the process that you go through. And it's not like everyone gets their way when we do this process. It's collective bargaining, it's negotiation, it's looking at the contract and the agreement as a whole, not as individual pieces as part of that. So I think that's an important piece to recognize. And I know that it feels like this is being done in secret, but that's collective bargaining in Massachusetts. That's the way it has to go. So looking at, and I'm just responding to some of the feedback that I've gotten, and I know Christine has as well, in members of the school committee. So I never like to bring other communities in any discussion. I don't want to talk about other communities. I'm focused on Medfield and what's important for our kids in our community. However, I do get feedback from emails or whatever that talk about other communities. I just want to be clear about some of the stuff that is important for us to recognize and put things in context and perspective. So I know that the hybrid isn't ideal. But I think the goal of this committee and all of us was to make sure our kids got into school. And our kids got into school today, and they will tomorrow, and they will Monday and Tuesday. And I think that was the most important goal, is to get our kids. I think our teachers understand that if you start remote, you don't get a chance to build those relationships that are so important. The only way anything survived last spring in any school district in the state or this country is that they were relationships built with students for 7 or 8 months prior to that. You can't do that if you start remote, in my opinion. You just can't do that. So I think of communities around us because, again, there's that comparison piece that I get sometimes in emails. I look at Wellesley, I look at Needham, I look at DS, Millis, Holliston, Franklin, King Philip, all right around us that are all starting remote. And their kids aren't having the opportunity that our kids had today. So I just think that it needs to provide a little context to our conversation about, what we felt was important and what the teachers felt was important, is to make sure that our kids had face-to-face instruction and get these kids back into some sense of normalcy. And I know that the Westwood just keeps coming up to me, as far as why can't we do it if Westwood is? Westwood is not mandating live streaming at all. It's an option, and they are encouraged to do as much as possible, but it's not a requirement. They don't have to sit there and live stream, and I think that's the belief in our community right now. And I just want to be clear. I've seen the language. I've talked to the superintendent. I know exactly how it's happening and what's going on there. It's not required. And I know that Christine's going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of what we're doing as a district in that direction and some of the good stuff that's happening in our classrooms. But I just wanted to be clear about what that looks like and how it's happening. Next one. So I really want to acknowledge the frustration around transportation. I mean, I think that is something that Michael and I and all of us in central office have been feeling and have been working on now for 3 weeks straight with some of the issues that have come up. As a parent myself, I have a high school student and a college student. If I had a little kid, nothing would be more frustrating than realizing a couple of days before school that my kid doesn't have bus transportation. So I totally understand the frustration, but I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. So our approach was to make sure that our students were transported without cross-contaminating schools. That is not the approach everyone has taken around the state. So we felt it was important to have our buses just transport students to their particular school. So if if you've had kids in Medfield before, you know that we have a bus that does a particular neighborhood or a few streets, and there are kids at the elementary level from all 3 schools on there. We really wanted to avoid that. We wanted to make sure that if you were a Dale kid, you got on one of the 5 buses that went to Dale Street, and you didn't have kids from Memorial or Wheelock on there. We felt really strongly about that. The same with the middle school and high school. We did the exact same thing with them. So that is challenging. There's no doubt about it. So we assigned buses to each school. The bus routes that we made and the assignments that we made going into our first live day today were based on the parents that indicated on the survey that they were going to be using bus transportation. We had 1,100 responses to that survey. So we felt pretty confident at that point that we had all the students that were going to be in transportation. Clearly that has not been the case, as we've heard from parents this week, and we've been really trying hard to accommodate as many parents as we can. I think what happened is that, as I told you guys in the beginning, all you parents in the beginning of the summer, that this is going to be the first of 3 or 4 many surveys you were going to get. I think folks just kind of confused surveys because the first one wasn't binding. It just wanted to get some feedback. But that second one that I discussed and read in a previous slide really was, what we were using to develop the buses to start today. So I feel like totally hear the frustration, but we've generated a wait list, and the wait list doesn't mean you're not going to get transportation. The wait list means that we're trying to determine if we have to add routes, buses, or we're going to do double runs. So we recognize the fact that many folks live beyond the 2 miles and are entitled to transportation. We understand that, but we needed to run a cycle of cohort A, cohort B to see what our capacity is so that we can provide transportation to everyone that needs it. And the limitations of having 24 students versus having 72 is challenging, but we may be able to accomplish that through double runs and starting one bus a little earlier, dropping off and going out and getting the other children before they, to bring into school. So that, again, that's not ideal either, but none of this is ideal. None of us want to be in a hybrid. None of us want to have 24 kids in a class, in a bus. But we have only so much that we can work with in terms of the number of buses that we have. So we are working. We don't want to deny anyone, bus transportation. We know that it's vital for families, especially the fact if you have two parents working. It's almost impossible if you have two parents working not to utilize the bus. So we get that, and we want to make sure that we make that right for people. But we just need a week or two, because we based it on the folks that submitted the survey on the 30th, and that's how we made our bus route. So we're making some headway in it. We've added folks the last couple of days. We had some kids that we've added the last couple of days where we have capacity, but we just need it to play out a little bit. So I just want folks to know that we're not saying we're not going to transport people. We're doing the best we can with the folks that signed up. And now that we have others that want transportation or need transportation, that we're going to make arrangements for that. So I just want to address that I totally understand the frustration and get it. It's especially with your younger child, I understand the frustration, but we're working on it, working real hard to make that right. And we just need a week or so to get that cycle of cohort A and cohort B to go through, so we can really get a sense of what the real bus capacity is. Christine.
Hey, Jeff, I'm going to ask people again to not put comments in the chat until we are done. And then if you could keep those comments to questions and information that you need, that would be most helpful. We're certainly always happy to accept opinions afterwards, but and of course we're happy to accept them here, but in the interest of time and interest of making sure that we get as much information out to people as possible, please wait until after the presentation before you start going into the question and answer. Okay, thank you so much.
So Christine's going to get into the curriculum instruction, nuts and bolts, and some of the stuff that we're working on, and give folks a better sense of what this means for our district.
Hi everyone, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to talk about curriculum instruction and how that's unfolding in this hybrid model. So a little bit of background on curriculum. Curriculum is the foundation of our work, regardless of the format. So I'm always thinking about curriculum in terms of a hybrid, face-to-face, or remote models. And this year especially, we're looking at creating and developing curricula that is flexible enough and that we can pivot really at a moment's notice. So that is a real basis of the development of curricula, and something that keep that in mind as we go forward. Now, all curricula in the district meets or exceeds the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE frameworks. This is a standard and something that we are beholden to, not only to meet, but to exceed, and that's a Medfield standard as well. Now, to focus specifically, last year, the DESE frameworks were in place. However, with the shutdown, they were modified by DESE. So as a result, we relooked at the curricula and we pared it down based on DESE guidance, and that happened last spring after the shutdown. This year, there is no change to the frameworks. It is an expectation of DESE that the frameworks and basically the curricular standards that our district is beholden to is the same as any typical year. So this is something that is key and something to keep in mind as we go forward.
Christine, I would add that at my meeting with the commissioner last week with all superintendents, the question keeps coming up, are we having MCAS this year? And he has been very clear that there will be MCAS in the federal government is driving that they will not give out waivers this year as they gave out last year. So it's not like the state is pushing that as much as the federal government is, but that is an important piece that Christine had mentioned about the frameworks of the frameworks, and we're still moving forward with that.
Okay. So thanks. Yeah, so absolutely. It's to meet the framework objectives by the end of the year, and that is measured by MCAS. Now, it's an important consideration. Back in July, DESE made an announcement that the school year would be reduced to 170 days versus the normal 180 days to allow for additional staff development. So keep that in mind as we go forward, that the same expectations for curricular framework, but we do have 10 fewer days. So this is the first of a number of key takeaways, and I call this one the golden rule, because again, keep in mind that curricula is the foundation of what we do. This year, that we are held to the same high standards as any other normal year, and we are committed to meet this expectation. This golden rule informs all aspects of our curriculum, instruction, assessment, professional development, and that's something you're going to hear over and over again tonight in my presentation. So curricula, meeting standards. So we have these standards to meet, and how are we going to do that? And the real key to that is curriculum mapping. Now, curriculum mapping is something that is common across schools across the United States. And it's really identifying our curricula. What do we teach? What are our major goals in our upcoming units? And how do they align to the same frameworks? In addition, there's additional information on these maps, including what are the major experiences and assessments within the unit, and also a pacing guide. What is taught and when? And so this is something that we've really been focused on, not only last year, since the start of the last year, and this has been going on for years in the district, but there was an interest in the focus starting last fall. But with what happened in March 12th, it modified and it changed, because now we have the frameworks that were in place, and now we're in a shutdown situation in which we have this modified curricula that needed to happen as a result of the state shutdown. So in responding to DESI's modification of the curricula, we had all the teachers in the district create curriculum maps that were aimed to support the students, the parents, and the teachers during the shutdown. We see parents as a partner in this, and it's something, especially when we were in that remote learning model, it was essential that parents knew and understood what was being taught and what was the expectation in terms of experiences and also time frame. And this was posted on a website, and this is a screenshot of that website, and it's still live now. It's the remote learning map. It's the curriculum and pacing guide, and the link to that is located in that back to school guide that was sent out last week. So keep this in mind with curricula. Remember the foundation of what we do. It was how are we going to meet or exceed standards, the standards from DESI and the standards that from the community, and also how are we going to account for the shortened school year in the different format? Well, the answer to that is forward progress. This is something that we are going to be focused on through curricula, through instruction, through assessment, and through professional development. So this upcoming year, curricula is a major priority. We're going to continue with the focus on maps, and the map development activities have been ongoing. At our kickoff in our September 2020 orientation period, teachers started looking at their curricula, and they started to map out the first 6 weeks of their curricula in order to identify the major things that align to what they're teaching to the frameworks itself. And the focus was building on successive 1 to 2 week learning segments. Now, the 1 to 2 week learning segments are key here because it supports continuity and flexibility. We had teams of teachers, whether across grades, within departments, specific courses, for instance, and thinking about curricula from the start to the end. What is the end goal of that unit? What is the goal of that unit? And thinking of it into 1 or 2 week learning periods. And what that allows us is, by thinking about these in these discrete, tight units, these 1 to 2 week learning segments, it allows us to pivot relatively quickly, just in case there's a switch, for instance, from hybrid to remote to face-to-face or back again. So really thinking about curricula deeply. What is necessary to being taught? How does it align to the frameworks? How are we going to assess? So all of those, that work started on September 2020, and it's ongoing. Now it will continue at a greater length in a full day curriculum focused PD day. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to come up in October, where that mapping is going to continue and that real deep dive into curricula. How are we going to meet the state standards and exceed them? And how are we going to document that so everyone is focused on the curricular goals and the alignment and thinking about how teaching and instruction aligns to that. Also, there has been a number of introduction of digital-friendly curriculum supports, for instance. We're thinking about how that we can support teaching and learning and curricula specifically in any environment, whether we are in hybrid or, for instance, in remote. So adapting things like, adopting things such as Lexia, lab simulations, etc., thinking about how best we can propel that curricula and using technology to do so. We've been focusing on training on hybrid planning, and I'll talk a little bit more of that a little later when I talk about professional development. But thinking about teaching in a new way and teaching hybrid and thinking about curricular implementation in a new way. And then finally, the sharing of best practices. We have a number of best practices that we have identified. And again, I'll go into that a little more detail in the future, in a future slide. But for instance, the concept of the digital notebook that was implemented in the elementary, concept of daily logs that were used at the high school, those are spreading across to different grade levels or different departments. And I will talk about more of that in a little bit. So this is an example of one of the curricular activities that we implemented. And this was done at the high school. So this is an artifact from the PD that we focused on hybrid. Now keep in mind that teachers are looking at curricula and thinking about how best to support students who are both at home and in school at the same time within these discrete 2-week learning segments. So here's an example of the activity. Groups of high school departments were tasked to work together on a simple 2-week learning segment on the same topic. So here is the wellness department working on a 9th grade health setting. And notice that they were titled it for the unit title, the objective of the particular unit, and the segment. And that the focus on the essential question, what is the student is going to learn by the end of this? And you'll see how this is unfolded here. So here you have 2 weeks. So this is the first slide showing the first week. And this is for cohort A. And notice that it's shaded when they're remote. And then they are in person, it is not shaded. Notice the essential question, that is the goal of what is going to be learned by those students, whether they're remote in cohort A, for instance. What is going to be done for the activity and how is that going to be assessed? So this is one group of half the students, for instance, and they're going through the curricula trying to meet not only those individual daily goals, but also that learning segment or the essential question for the 2-week unit. So you'll see how this plays out here. You have, for instance, on Thursday, day 2, you have a lesson focusing on how does fitness affect your physical and emotional wellness, right? So keep this in mind as I show you what happens with the other group. So this is a big question that we've gotten a number of times. Departments determined on their own how best to determine how to lead a 2-week learning segment and what will unfold. So here in the wellness department, the cohort B, this is the exact same week. They are focusing, this is the same thing, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we focus on that Tuesday. Oh, sorry, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. That cohort B, that second column. What is stress and how does that affect your overall wellness? Notice that the essential question is slightly different. However, if you'll see that if you hop over to the 4th column, they catch the physical fitness one there. This department specifically decided, and they looked at the curricula itself, and they determined that they can get to the same goal. If you start with the same goal, for instance, and you think about how best to get there, this department specifically said it's not going to be sequential. We're going to have some activities that are very focused on remote, some activities that are going to be very focused on face-to-face. However, by the end of that 2-week learning unit, that they'll get to the same place at the very end. This is an example of one particular department's thoughts on how best their curricula unfolds. Now I can tell you, I met with all the departments. I've spoken to either department chairs or I met with whole departments. And every department in 912, how curricula unfolds is different from department to department. So really thinking about this and understanding the complexity of curricula, that it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's really how best to unfold curricula based on the particular department, content, lessons, etc. So this is really important work that had been done. Now this is in action. This is a great example of this being used right now by a 9th grade teacher. And this is my son's 9th grade teacher that's doing this. I live in the district. I have a son in 9th grade. And this is an example of that work really being embodied into the day-to-day work. So this showed up on his Google Classroom. And this is a way for him and really to share, the teacher to share what is going on. You'll see a couple of things here. French Revolution, this is 9th grade history. And you'll notice the description of the unit, and then you have those essential questions. And keep in mind that essential questions are that code of what is the expectations, what is the goal of the particular unit. And you'll see here is, you'll see the curricula. Again, notice how this teacher unfolded. You have Friday, this is this upcoming Friday, and then you have the Monday afterwards. Notice that how it's spelled out on word cohort B, cohort A, and then you have cohort A, cohort B. This teacher really unpacked and really thought about how best are they going to reach those curricular goals, and whether sometimes they're doing the exact same thing, sometimes they're doing something different, but at the end of the day, they're getting to the same goal at the end of the 2-week learning segment. So this is being operationalized real time by real teachers in our high school. So this is, again, an example. Sometimes it's sequential, sometimes it's building of skills, sometimes it's weaving. It really depends on the department and the unit itself. So, curriculum key takeaway number 2. Curriculum is a major focus of this upcoming year, and we demonstrated it time and time again in terms of the curriculum mapping, the upcoming PD, and just the ongoing discussion that's happening. And so PD on hybrid instruction and curriculum mapping will continue throughout the year. And this, again, is part of that foundation in terms of building of where we're going forward. So once I talked about curricula, I got to talk about instruction. And the reason why it's shaded out is that I want you to keep in mind that curricula, again, is the basis and we're building on the curricula. So instruction, if curricula is the map, instruction is the vehicle. And it really asks the question, what is the best way to meet curricular goals? Now, instruction by its very nature takes very different forms. And there's a lot of different factors that are involved in that. It could be the subject level, it could be the age level or the developmental level of the child, teacher expertise, a whole bunch of things go into this. What I want you to take away from this is that there's no one-size-fits-all model. You cannot take one typical teaching style and expect it to be replicated across departments or grade levels or anything like that. It's really something that's incredibly nuanced, and we should honor that. So instead of a one-size-fits-all model, I prefer something called best practices. It's really thinking about and looking at what is working in a particular grade level, discipline, or a particular unit, for instance, and then taking those practices, what is working, and then sharing it with others, making that very public. And so keep this in mind, is that hybrid instruction is incredibly new, and best practices are just now emerging and they're evolving. I had, prior to this role here, I came from the School of Education at Boston College, and I can assure you, I know that curricula in and out. Hybrid instruction was not part of those discussions at all for years. So again, what is emerging is happening on the ground and right now. So it's critical that we are right now thinking about how best to support instruction, giving support and advice, having opportunities for teaching for cross-pollination, and then making sure it's really public for us to learn on what is the best practice for instruction. So, a couple more key takeaways. First of all is it's important to keep in mind that instruction is contextually based. It can and it very much should vary to support the student needs and the subject and content. So keep that in mind, a one-size-fits-all model is just not going to work. But also the second thing is to keep in mind is that hybrid instruction is incredibly new. So our focus here and the focus of districts everywhere is to focus on the building a repertoire of best practices and to share across the district. It is not going to be perfect coming out of the box. We are going to learn, and it's something that we can learn and really think about it from the nuances of, again, grade levels, supporting particular students, and adapting to the teacher styles, the whole bunch of different things to keep that in mind as we build this repertoire. And again, keep in mind that we use data all the time. I'm steeped in data constantly. And so thinking about how to best build that best practice repertoire, and that's something we've been doing really all through the spring, and we're continuing now. At the very end of last year, last day of school, I had an opportunity to meet with a number of students. I met students from Memorial all the way up to the high school, and we asked them about their experiences that past spring, because that was so important for us to do. And they were held in focus groups. So kids from across the district just talked about what happened in the spring, and it was fascinating. It was a great experience for me, and I learned a lot from the experience and really wrote down those data. A couple of things that were takeaways that worked, because again, looking at best practices. And one of the things that worked was daily morning meetings. people, the kids, the young kids love that, love the daily check-in, that connection with the teacher, that morning meeting to center. It's not a full day, it was just looking for a morning meeting. So that really worked well. So in response to that, that is something that we have adopted K-8, that there's this daily centering meeting with either their teacher or a cluster leader in order to replicate that, because our students really responded to that. Another thing our students liked was short-term due dates. Nothing incredibly long, but just like 2 day out, give a project, give a little time, and then 2 days later. They found that was a really nice spot where that gives them a little freedom to develop a particular idea, project, unpack it a little bit, but not go so far that they are completely lost, which can and does happen. So how that we've adapted that is a number of different things. One of which is to have that centering Zoom meeting that happens in the middle and high school. And that way and also elementary, that they have opportunities that students meet with their teachers really to set that week, and having that extended time for Wednesday Zooms. Office hours are implemented at the high school, and also there's remote check-ins at the high school as well. Again, not having this long period without kids having contact with their teachers, but really breaking it up into bite-sized bits so students can check in on a regular basis with their teacher if they are remote. Student-focused data told me other things as well. The slide deck, right? The elementary slide deck was incredibly popular. I've had parents pop into those focus groups. We did them via Zoom, and they said how much they liked it. They liked the grounding of it. They liked the variety of it. They liked the learning of it. It was just a really great model that evolved in the elementary school. So in response to that, this year, what we did was decided to expand that. And that right now, instead of just elementary, is now K-8, really taking the best practices that were teacher developed. It really came out of and emerged out of the elementary schools. And the middle school just grabbed onto it, and they're running with it as well. So it's just a really nice way of centering the curricula. And another thing that came out was about organization and streamlined communication. I heard from a number of students saying, wow, the emails were constant, or I wasn't really sure where my homework was posted, or I like Google Classroom, but I'm not sure if people are using it in all the different ways that's possible. So in response to that feedback from the students, that we implemented a number of things, and this is a lot what came from the high school itself in terms of standardization of Google Classroom practices. There's been a focus on executive functioning, including a professional development session that we just had, really thinking about supporting kids in organization, and also other forms of streamlined organization, such as a digital log. This is something that science teachers had been doing, and they introduced this and they shared this with other departments. And so that social studies example that I showed you is an example of that digital log that's being adopted by teachers right now, really thinking about how best to organize what is going on in those remote days so kids don't get lost and they stay organized. Another thing we heard is they loved the specials. Kids love specials, but they didn't think there was enough of them, those enrichment courses. So that is much more prominent in the curricula this spring. So that's another response to hearing what the students said, really understanding from the data on what we did well and showcasing those best practices. We received a lot of feedback, parent feedback as well, and a lot of it focused on the things that I've talked about with the students, but there were other things as well. So for instance, we heard from parents that it was really key to have more structured meeting times, that they found in the spring that meetings were at different times in the day and there was no real regularity of that. So as a result, this upcoming year, meeting times are much more structured and following much more of a schedule. The other thing is the higher expectation in the number of hours. We found that last spring that students were receiving work, but in many cases, parents felt it was just not enough work for them to do, and the students really needed a more robust experience. So as a result, that this is something that we put into the plan from August, and this is something I really want to highlight, and this is the hours of instruction beyond face-to-face experiences. Now, if you notice that the hours, it's really developmentally appropriate. So it's not a one-size-fits-all model, but really thinking about the age of the student. So if you look at the hours, this is beyond the days, two full days in a hybrid plan, is that students will have different amounts of hours of expected remote instruction. This is the amount that they're expected to be doing schoolwork. So Memorial, for instance, 9 hours a week, Wheelock 9, Dale 12, Blake 15, and high school 15. So this is just an expectation of really growing the amount of work and really setting that expectation for a robust learning experience that happens while the students are remote. More feedback. We've seen more feedback from faculty who were really thoughtful in providing what their experiences were. As Jeff mentioned earlier, we heard time and time again that there were connectivity issues, that there's really disconnect between the Chromebooks that they were issued and Zoom as the platform that was used for streaming and just communication. So as a result, MacBook Airs were purchased, and they were distributed just the last week, and we've had a number of sessions. Jeff mentioned we had 6 straightforward sessions and lots of other sessions on top of that in terms of one-on-one and different opportunities for us to work with teachers. And so they are learning about MacBook Airs and finding them to be a complete difference in terms of their ability to connect via Zoom. Other digital tools were also incorporated. We are using things in different ways and really thinking thoughtfully on how technology can be used to leverage learning. And we're incorporating those into our day-to-day toolbox of tools that we can use with students. And then also focusing on department-specific needs, having conversations with different department chairs on what different tools they need to propel their curricula. So for instance, there's music-specific software that's been purchased in order to think about how best to do music in a remote model. I had a great conversation with the high school science math department, who were really thinking about using styluses and how best that would help them demonstrate how to problem solve and really visualize that much better. So we're going to get them for those. And also classroom microphones. We've purchased a whole bunch. I believe we're purchasing more. They actually just came in. I believe they just came in. I'm looking at Owen. And that those are going into classrooms as well to make sure that we can really attend to the sound issues and making sure that all our students can hear us if we're using our MacBook Airs and using to build our capacity of the microphones itself that we're currently in place. Assessment's always key. How do you know your students are learning? So we are focusing on assessment all the time. And so assessment is something that we've been focusing on specifically on reading and math instruction. There's a significant concern, and I understand in terms of how do our elementary students, and what have they learned in reading and in math? Has there been any instructional loss, and how to make sure we can support them best? So we were looking for different software, things that we can use to measure what they've learned against a standardized standard, for instance, our frameworks. And so we can assess in terms of where are they and how we best can support them. So the district has moved to using Lexia Rapid, for instance, as a way that we can test. And it allows us to test students both in person as well as remotely if need be. We've used the Renaissance Star package for a while, and we're going to continue with that. So we have data from years back that we're going to continue on. Again, measuring students, their progress along time. We take these dipsticks, we take these measurements multiple times over the year, and we compare where they should be compared to standardized grade level assessments. So we know exactly in terms of where their growth is and where they need to be supported. And those data are shared directly with the teachers to help enhance their instruction. In addition to those standardized assessments, we also use a number of different other assessments, and something that teachers do on a day-to-day basis. They use both formative and summative assessments in their daily use. So this has been a time and time conversation because, again, keep in mind, hybrid instruction is new. This is something that we haven't done. So teachers right now are really reflecting on how best to use assessment and implement formative and summative assessments in a hybrid classroom. So we're talking a lot, we're doing a lot of PD, we're doing a lot of discussions on this, and this will continue as we move forward, as we share best practices. So the key takeaway number 3 is the district is making daily progress towards comprehensive best practice repertoire building. And this is going to improve the teaching and learning across the district. Keep in mind, at the end of the day, teachers are learners, and they're really interested in improving their skills. So their skills in learning and growing and adapting to this environment has and will continue to grow. And this will continue as we introduce more tools, as we introduce more professional development. So opportunities will be provided by us for cross-district sharing of best practices and instruction assessment so they can learn from each other. Because we found that they're the ones, the peer teachers are the best teachers of each other, and they can definitely grow. If they see one teacher doing in their classroom something that is new and innovative, it happens all the time. Another person will try, etc. We have an amazing team of tech integrationists that are involved to support them, as well as working with grade level leaders, department chairs, and building principals to do this. So I have to address the elephant in the room, which is streaming. We've heard this time and time and time again. I really want to focus and dive a little deep into this subject. So the questions come out, and I'm sure there's a number of questions on there. I haven't seen the Q&A yet, is why can't we implement streaming? So keep in mind this, streaming is appropriate for some, but not all learning contexts. I just talked about how teaching and learning is really contextually based, that you develop curricula and you implement curricula really based on the subject, the developmental level of the child, the teacher's expertise, etc. So one size fits all model isn't going to work. Keep in mind also that teachers are now equipped with MacBook Airs, and they've had them for fewer than 10 days in their hands. And it does take time, as Jeff mentioned before, to switch from a Chromebook to a MacBook takes some time to learn the skills and really learn just how to operationalize a Mac, for instance. So teachers are receiving training on their MacBooks, and they're growing, they love them, and they're growing more and more comfortable with them. So keeping these two things in mind, best practices are being developed, and it's happening. I'm seeing it all the time. And the memo agreement that's in place allows for this to happen. They allow them to build their practices and allows them to implement them once they have the skills, and those are, again, coming along. And robust learning, the one thing I want to keep in mind is that robust learning can occur in person and asynchronously. It is not just streaming doesn't equate quality education, that robust learning can happen in a lot of different ways. And again, I mentioned before that I'm a parent, and I can tell you, I've seen it. I've been on the other side. I know what my son's been learning. And some of the most amazing experiences he had as a student were through asynchronous remote instruction. I'm thinking back to his 8th grade science teacher last spring, who had Michael think about climate change. And it was such a creative and thoughtful lesson. He had him think of as if he was a world leader. And he gave him different criteria to think about. Well, you have to think about the economy, and you have to think about jobs, and you have to think about the environment, and you have to think about resources. And there were all these different criteria. And what he had to do was, he had to make sure that his country didn't tank financially, that he stayed elected, that his rivers stayed clean, and there was a whole bunch of other factors. And he used this online website in order to really move levers to try to figure that out. Again, teacher wasn't there holding his hand doing it. He had to figure that out himself. And he realized pretty quickly that climate change isn't an easy thing. He couldn't just ban everything, or just because the economy would tank, for instance. And he realized the complexity of climate change really quickly by doing this. And I was really blown away as a teacher looking at my son really learning this, and the conversations around the dinner table were huge that day. And so I share this with you to spotlight that robust learning can occur, and it's not just in streaming, but it can occur in a variety of different ways. So the instruction key takeaway number 3 is, remember my golden rule, right? This year is that we are held to a high standard, and we're held by high standard by the state as well as the community. And this is the same as any other normal year. So as a result, we are totally 100% committed to meeting this expectation. So, talked about curricula, I talked about instruction, and now this is pulling it all together in professional development. So think about the metaphor I'm painting right now. Curricula is the map, it's where we're gonna go. The instruction is the vehicle, it's how we're gonna get there. The PD is the fuel that will get us there. So keep in mind that last year, March 12th, shutdown happens, and we have a district with teachers who are at various different levels of tech proficiency. So we had to think about really quickly on how making sure that people can use digital tools to leverage learning. So as a result, the tech integration team, which I'm a part of, really launched regular sustained professional development in technology tool use. We exposed them to a variety of different tools, some for assessment, some for propelling instruction, etc., and really worked with teachers. And this was sustained daily professional development that occurred. And again, there's artifacts on our hybrid learning website. I really encourage you to look at it, and the link is on the back to school guide. But really teaching teachers how to use these tools. And that happened all last spring. And the team, I do want to publicly say how phenomenal they were. And so they were able to roll out this PD, and it happened a variety of different ways, whether some were asynchronous, some were synchronous, but really getting our teachers up to speed on how to use these tools. So we reflected on that. We're really thinking about that was great, but we really want to think about how best we can expand PD this year. And so the goals, they're really thinking about how we did it last spring, really informed how PD would unfold this spring. So this fall. So this year, there are 4 major areas of focus of professional development. They are curriculum development in a hybrid model, best practices in teaching in a hybrid environment, and also cultural proficiency and implicit bias, and supporting the whole child and whole person. Now, all 4 are incredibly important. For tonight's purposes, I'm really focusing on number 1 and number 2, but I do want to keep in mind that we do still focus on cultural proficiency and implicit bias, and that will be a focus this year, as well as supporting the whole child and the whole person. So this is a screenshot of the 10-day orientation period. Remember back in the first slide or so, or second slide, I spoke about how the number of days was reduced by the state from 180 to 170. Well, that's the 10 days, and the 10 days was specifically earmarked towards teacher development. And you'll see here, and I know it's probably really too small to see the print on there, but this is the calendar that was developed to help support professional development on each one of those 4 goals. And so there were sections on digital learning, Zooming, for instance, becoming more proficient on Google Classroom. But there's also other things that were incredibly important for propelling us forward, such as the focus on ELs, the focus on executive functioning, again, other things on things that focused on racism, et cetera. But keep in mind, for this purpose, there were a number of different professional development opportunities to really move us forward in a hybrid model in this district. Now, what's really interesting for you to see is just the color coding here. Each one is pretty much an hour block. You have the orange is the professional development that occurred that was in many times a seminar type of fashion, a classroom type of fashion. But everything that's in that slate blue is curriculum planning. It's a lot of time set aside to really giving teachers the time to really build their curricula and thinking about how to best leverage learning and how to meet those curricular goals that were outlined by the state. So you can see that all in that slate gray color. So a couple of big, huge things to think about for professional development. Again, this is the fuel that will really rocket us to the direction we need to go. Professional development needs to be sustained. We had and we will shift from that teaching people how to use digital tools to teaching them how to use digital tools to leverage deep and meaningful learning. So that's a shift, and that's a real one. And that's something that the team was all ready for, the teachers are ready for, and that's something that we're implementing now. It's taking teaching and learning using these tools to the next level. There's been a focus on synchronous learning. How can we engage students from at home and in person at the same time? And this is something that we're thinking about different ways and how we can use specific tools. So an example of which is again, I had a number of amazing teachers that worked with my son last spring. I want to highlight just one example of synchronous learning without using Zoom necessarily, is that my son was struggling with just writing this different paragraph, and the teacher had him work with my son at the same time using a Google Doc. My son would write, the teacher would provide edits, and again, he could see the edits at the same time. And this real world interaction is a nice example of this sort of synchronous experience with my son being remote. That's just one example, but there's many examples where you can think about how to engage a whole class in place, as well as the kids at home. And so we're really exploring how best to do that in a thoughtful way, in a way that supports teachers and students. There's been a prioritization of consistency across grade levels and courses and sharing of best practices. The creation of those digital notebooks is one way of doing it, but there's other ways of just fostering conversations and really thinking about curricula and thinking about working together. Again, I've had the fortune of working with some amazing educators this spring and fall, really thinking about curricula and talking about that in this new model, in the model that none of us have really experienced, what can we learn from each other? And making sure that the experiences are similar. Part of that curriculum mapping exercise is to identify what are the hallmark, what are the key activities, assessments, etc., that are done. And this is a way of people realizing that we can work together, and together we can build a stronger curricula. And so that experiences that happens in one person's class be very similar to another person's class in terms of those capstone key different assessments. There's been a focus on the most vulnerable students. It's something we really highlighted. Our data indicated that remote learning didn't work for all students. We understand that. And that's something that we are working hard to address. So we provided a number of different professional development opportunities focusing on special ed, English learner best practices, things focusing on trauma-informed instruction. And again, I mentioned this before, supporting executive functioning, organization, self-sufficiency, and doing that in a variety of different ways. Not only having teachers focus on their individual practice, but how as we as a district can help support that as well. What can we streamline? How can we think things from a student's point of view in terms of organization and really build that self-sufficiency? And the final thing, I'd be really remiss in saying this, is that parents are incredible partners with us as well. So professional development will extend to them. We understand that many of us were put into this new world of looking at Google Classroom, for instance, for the first time, or really navigating, just logging into something like Seesaw. So we are building and creating professional development opportunities for parents as well, realizing that they are our partners in learning, and so we can support them in supporting their child when they're at home. So key takeaway number one for PD is that professional development this year is informed by last year's practices, but it's going to be different in terms of it aims to support all learners in our community, teachers, administrators, and parents. We are learning from the past, really implementing forward with that forward progression of curricula in mind. Key takeaway number two is professional development will provide teachers with the skills and confidence to implement curricula in a variety of different ways. They're building their tools in their toolbox, and all of this is to focus on supporting students' learning and improving their practice. And the memo agreement that's in place allows for this growth.
I just want to wrap up with a couple of slides, looking at our next steps and takeaways. In spring 2020, there was an emergency, obviously, remote that we went to. So devices were on uneven connectivity and device access for students and teachers. We've expanded the capacity now and distribution, and we've upgraded our devices for our teachers in the fall 2020 hybrid. Schedule was definitely unpredictable, uneven Zoom opportunities. Now we have structured schedules, expanded Zoom opportunities. In the spring, the curriculum, significant time was spent on review of materials, slimmed down curriculum expectations. Obviously, grading was an issue back then as well. Now we're forward progression of the content as outlined by the DESE frameworks. We had limited opportunities for special enrichment courses in our curriculum. Now we've expanded that in the fall for our hybrid model. Instruction was the focus on learning on how to get digital tools. Now our focus is on learning digital tools to leverage deep learning and enhance the understanding of our content. Policies were suspended and modified for grading and attendance, and now we follow our usual policies for all grading and attendance in every single building. And number two takeaway, the groundwork has been laid for a successful year. And I just think it's important to remember that we are in day 2 of the school year. Cohort A hasn't even come in person yet. So data-informed decisions will continue to collect feedback. We'll make adjustments during the process as necessary. We're supporting continuous growth to continue to provide PD and support for our teachers to expand their expertise in hybrid and remote format. And we continue to have high expectations to meet the academic and social-emotional, expectations of the state and also the Medfield community as a whole.
That's it.
I want to thank you so much for being as patient as many of you have been, for holding your questions. And I hope that you have heard some or even more than you wanted to hear, but I thought that it was really important
Presentation to be able to kind of bring together the understanding
and the forward motion behind what is happening
in our district.
I will open this up to question and answer now. So I see there are
Some questions popping up, and I will start reading through. Leo is going to be my backup to make sure.
Actually, can you ask me?
I'm sorry, can you tell me if you can hear me? You can't hear? I wonder what.
I'm sorry.
What are we?
You can't? All right, I'm getting a lot of conversations.
Or a lot of feedback that they can't. Okay, so why don't I start going through questions? All right, do you want to dismiss those, Leo, and I'll see if I can find, okay. All right, so this is Dave Blake. Is this memo of agreement
available for public review?
Yeah, so once that's signed, that'd be posted on our website. It's not signed by all parties yet.
Okay. Please consider the completion of work on remote days as attendance. Okay, so we can just kind of hear
that kind of input. Hold on. It would be helpful to have meetings and agendas posted
on the district website. It is actually 48
hours beforehand, but I'm certainly happy to try
for our meetings.
For our meetings, is what I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Jennifer Sullivan, I am very grateful for the work that has gone into providing an education for our children. I appreciate all the information Christine has shared. My question is about assessing the
learning, since that is the goal of the above. What type of benchmark
assessments will occur in the beginning of the year to determine gaps in learning due to the
4 months of remote work in the spring? And what will the RTI or response to interventions or other and support for standards that have not yet been mastered? And Nancy Kufferman says that you can barely hear me. Oh, but you can hear me now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the question about assessment. We are using two benchmark assessments this spring, and those were specifically focusing on ways we can measure learning to see what happened in the spring, and also to measure where they are in the fall. And I mentioned these earlier, I'm going to mention them again. One is Lexia Rapid. Lexia Rapid was adopted this year because it allows us that flexibility of measurement, that we can do this measurement both remotely as well as face-to-face if need be. And this will be done 3 times this upcoming academic year. And this is measuring students' reading understanding against standardized benchmarks. And the other is something that we've used for some time. It's called Renaissance Math. And again, that assessment that had been done for many years now will continue. And again, that will happen 3 times this upcoming year as well. And those will happen, those will be unfolding. We're doing them, we just put the Lexia on our books for the first week of October. We're giving teachers opportunities to welcome the students. Again, they're just back, building a relationship, and then we'll do those benchmark assessments. And from there, those data will go to the teachers as well as our there is a learning loss.
You have to unmute.
No, I have 8 here, so, okay. Are we able to be heard right now? Are we back, folks? Okay. Will there be this is from Kathy Costello. Will there be an extended add drop period at the high school as students realize they cannot self-teach themselves 60% of an AP or honors course? Also, we can barely hear you right now, which I appreciate. Please let me know if that continues to be the case.
Yeah, I can have the high school follow up with that. I'll write down Kathy's name and have them follow up.
Sue says, are you going to address pre-submitted questions? Sue, if you did not hear your question addressed throughout Christine's presentation, please feel free to tape it into the question and answer, okay? What are the metrics and measurements of success? High school was not on the assessment slide. Can you please explain the check-in on remote days for high school? So that's 2 different questions. Is there a way to kind of specifically explain to the high school cohort, perhaps not here, because I don't want to get too granular, and I think we're talking about assessments. Is there a way of having the high school send out kind of what they will be doing for assessments, or can we quickly answer that here, and then we'll answer the second part?
May I unmute myself? So we're working on that curriculum mapping, and in the curriculum mapping itself, not only does the goal for the particular unit, it also says major activities, assessments, etc. And this will be published, and this will be publicly posted upon the completion of the curricular maps, which will happen in October.
And the second part of her question is, and the second part of her question is, can you please explain the check-in on remote days for the high school? Can you explain the kind of check-in process? Jeff.
So high school teachers are required to check in with their classrooms on the remote 1 out of the 2 remote days at a minimum, and Zoom them in. So every single class, it'll either be, so for instance, if it's cohort A, they would be Zoomed in either Thursday or Friday on their class, and they're required to do that one out of the 2 days whenever students are hybrid. Remote.
I have a question from Dave Blake. You indicated the MOA accommodates growth in the current hybrid model. Does it account for returning to full in-person learning? And if so, what is the criteria that must be met?
So there's some indicators in the MOA that discuss that. Most of it is using data around COVID-19 data around Norfolk County, Medfield, being in close consultation with the Board of Health, all those different indicators which will allow us to go back. I know the state has told us to use several, 4, 5, 6 weeks of data before you make a decision, because you could be in a color-coded scheme that the state has put out. You could be a gray town one day and then a yellow the next. So not to be flip-flopping based on that week's data, but really take a look at several weeks, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of data before you make any decisions on whether you go either full remote, full in-person, or change whatever model you're in.
Yes, Jeff, it's our intention to evaluate that on an ongoing basis, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Carol Ferris. If I am correct in my assessment, from hearing you all speak, there is no way to change the remote days to live Zoom stream classes, which would be more beneficial to the high school kids. And that's a statement of Carol's. I don't think that that's actually what we had said, that it would be more beneficial to the high school kids. But Christine, you spoke to that. Do you want to kind of quickly recap what the idea is around the hybrid asynchronous, synchronous learning and how we'll work that in?
No, thank you for that. Let me just turn this up. Okay. Teaching and learning happened in many different forms, and that was definitely in my presentation. And really understanding that as curricula is developed, how it's implemented, it's important to keep in mind the context. And also to keep in mind that robust learning can happen in an asynchronous and synchronous manner. Now, synchronous manner, I'm speaking specifically about streaming. It's really important to keep in mind, really think about this. Our teachers received their MacBooks fewer than 10 days ago and are learning about that particular technology as well as these other digital tools that we're implementing. And so we are right now working furiously to support them in professional development and just giving them opportunities to get more used to this model and really supporting them in exploring different ways of teaching, and one of which is streaming, for instance. And so this is something that, again, I've heard from specific teachers saying, hey, I'd like to try this out. Can you help me? And so this is the one thing that will happen. It'll unfold over the next days and weeks, is me or a member of the instructional technology team thinking about or working directly with teachers on how to implement this in a structured, safe way. And for us to bring those best practices to the other teachers. Oh, sorry.
Do you want to kind of go back for a second, or can we simply say that that this really is robust, that there is an ability to be able to kind of expand these two up? This is Martina Spitzer and Matt Silva. I'm going to quickly clear these two up. There's two people asking, Martina Spitzer and Matt Silva, why the high school AP question is being deferred. And I think that Dr. Marson clarified that for me, that essentially you wanted to go back and speak to the high school and really talk to them about what's going on there, or so you can get better information. Okay, so we wanted to make sure that we were giving you the right information. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to kind of group some of these. Has there been any discussion? I'll do bus questions. What is the process for getting on the bus waiting list? That is from Joshua Stefanik. Kristen Martin, has there been any discussion about providing transportation for cohort C students on their C days? There are several populations that are in this cohort. So
I think, you know, as far as the bus waiting list, I think if you have called central office and has spoken to Phyllis or Michael and given your name, then you are on the waiting list. And the other was cohort C. We're still working on cohort C transportation for their C days. I think that's, you know, something that I sent an email to those folks earlier in the week about that, and we're still working on that. So we felt good about making sure that the cohort C kids could have those C days. Now we're just working on the transportation piece.
okay, and I actually do need you to put your full name in. I can't really do initials, ES, and I know it's a bus question. I think that was actually covered at the very beginning of the presentation, and we will post our timeline around that right after this meeting and the presentation that we gave tonight. So Ryan and Tracy Bolin, in the definition of 15 hours of remote instruction, I assume this is at the high school, what is being included in this is instruction simply having the student log in and pursue self-study during those 2 days of being remote. I think we've kind of largely covered that, and I hope that you've gotten an answer to that. If you haven't, please feel free to reach out and we will kind of continue that discussion. Carlos Danger. Can we expect our middle school children to receive 60 minutes worth of links in conjunction with 30 minutes of personal reading every day they are remote learning? Today, our child was finished by 9:15 a.m. This is reminiscent of our spring experience.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we were going to talk about as a leadership team is making sure that the remote day is robust enough and that folks are adhering to what the plan has for recommended hours. And those hours aren't just in remote, aren't just direct instruction. There, you know, it could be asynchronous, could be independent work, all of that in those hours. So I think that's what, I did hear that from someone else today too. So that's something we're going to look at as leadership team next week.
Okay. So continuous improvement is kind of where we're going there. Maud, if you, Maud, could tell me specifically what your name is in the comments, then I can answer your question. All right, but Maud needs to put it in. I mean, we can do it, but we can't know. Sue Tui, there are several in-person classes where the kids are in the classroom and the teacher is remote, so no in-person teaching at all. Can you please address as to why?
So we had certain teachers that are teaching remote. That was a request that we honored. So they're doing that in a live stream format.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Annette Gallagher, when will students in cohort D have more information about when they will start?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
So I spoke to the folks, this is high school, I'm assuming. If it is, I spoke to the folks at TECA today. The registrations are in, and right now you should be here from the folks at TECA most likely tomorrow, if not Monday at the latest, with the login information, etc. But the information is in the courses. The individual guidance counselors have reached out, identified the specific courses to be registered for, and that information is in. So you should get that log information shortly. And you'll get a welcome letter from both our guidance department, as well as you'll get something specifically from TECA shortly as well.
Okay, thanks. Gracie and Walsh, half of my son's high school teachers are teaching remotely. Is there an option to have remote cohort stream in if teacher is also remote?
I mean, I think we have to be clear that there is an opportunity and an option. The door is open for live streaming. It's just, as Christine said, we're working on that and working on training. Teachers are not required to live stream other than the required times that they need to be on. It's in the morning for K to 8, and then, as I said earlier, the times on the remote days, one of the remote days checking in with their classroom. So they have the option to do that, but they're not required to do that.
Okay. Renee Howley, Christine's slide showed that we would have 15 hours instruction outside in the in-person days. Many of us understood this to be teacher instruction, not emails with links for students to self-pace. Can you explain further? Jeff, do you want to just, I mean, I don't think that was ever fully specifically part of the plan. Yeah.
As I said before, that it's a combination of asynchronous, synchronous instruction, projects, all of the above add into that time.
Okay, and I understand the benefits of the morning meeting at Blake, but not when they are not followed by teacher-led instruction. Why would we require teens to wake up early for a 10-minute check-in only? This age group requires more sleep, according to multiple, and I think I understand what you're saying, that kind of looking at the adolescent sleep schedule and sleep studies, about why you would wake them up earlier. There is a question. I think that
Yeah, I mean, I think
why would we require
I think
teens to wake
I
up
think
early?
Christine covered that in her presentation, that we want to make sure kids are on a schedule. We got feedback last time that they weren't on a schedule, and by having them check in into that meeting first thing starts that day off, and which on the work they need to do, and they continue their work after that. So I think that was, we got a lot of feedback on that there needs to be more structured schedule for kids.
Okay. Let's see. Again, with the Brian and Tracy Bolin, was Christine suggesting there could be live streaming on high school remote days after there is more PD? And I think that what we're saying is that there are always possibilities about what we do with PD. And again, that there is a mix of, that live streaming is a tool, but not necessarily a goal for instruction. As many things are tools for instruction, but are not actually the goal of instruction. So it's not off the table within the MOA, but it is also something that teachers have to really think about whether it works.
Yes, I think it's safe to say that, we're encouraging our teachers to use the technology to maintain the appropriate connections with teaching and learning in our students. There is no scenario where you're going to find a student sitting in front of a screen for 7 hours a day and it's going to come out an excellent AP student. That is just not the reality, folks. That is not what you would want for your students. That's definitely not what I want for my learners at home. So I understand the upside of feeling like instruction and knowledge is transferring through the computer into the minds of our students through the Zoom lesson. And that it resembles some sort of engagement. But without some true curriculum and some true project-based learning and the balance between those check-ins. And I think what we're meaning with those check-ins is to encourage our staff to be more comfortable with the technology and encouraging them to take advantage of that technology and what it offers to stretch that learning outside the traditional school day, so that although we are structuring what we're doing as the typical school day, what it might look like, it's absolutely giving access to content that otherwise wasn't there in the past and such readily available, and as well as the ability to leverage the technology in order for them to get access to teachers outside of the normal times as well. So I do know that there's office hours and other check-in times that are in in our structure. Am I wrong, Dr. Marston?
No, there's also extra help, grades 6 through 12 as well, which is what we typically do in the regular brick and mortar school. We have extra help time so there's extra help Zooms as well.
And I just want to be clear about that, because I know the angst, and some other districts are attempting this across the country. A couple in Massachusetts. It's quite a juggle, and to have a teacher go out and put a show on, essentially, for 6 periods a day or 4 periods a day, not necessarily going to equal, you know, great instruction. So I do want to commend the curriculum team for what they are putting together, and I encourage us all to support the instruction that's happening by supporting at home, by being aware of what the content is. And obviously, I don't want to see, you know, what we're calling a repeat of what happened in the spring. But the spring was, you know, we weren't prepared for. I think we're well prepared, and I think I'm hopeful that the technology will get used effectively to do our asking and not just be used for the sake of streaming. Not to mention, there's been quite a few large technology faux pas that we're seeing tonight with some struggles with Zoom. Google Meet crashed all week. Zoom had their struggles as well nationally. And so those do hinder the experience by far. So I just want to just echo that to everybody at home that, you know, it is a process. And I'm confident that our teaching staff here in our community will embrace this process moving forward and encourage that to continue in the best way possible. And hopefully I'm with the other people on here return full at some point in time. So
let's see if we can kind of get through some of these. Oh, thank you. It was Maud Coletti. Let me see if I can find your question, Maud, because we are getting pretty behind on the question list here. Leo, can you find her question? And Maud, we will get to you. I'm gonna have Matthew Newberg have the threshold for number of cases in a class school district that would cause Medfield to go full remote again been decided already. We kind of answered that we're kind of constantly and consistently looking at trends, correct?
Yeah, so we're looking at trends, and we would also look at what the state gives us in terms of their color code. So that comes out every Wednesday. We've either been green or gray, which are the best the last few times they've done that. So I think we're looking at the information and just trying to follow that data.
I found the question from Maud. How often are best practices being reviewed and shared with teachers? What are the expectations of teachers in terms of migrating curriculum toward best practices?
So I'll take that. Best practices is being reviewed constantly, informally, but in terms of formally, it's done in a variety of different ways. We have models set up where teachers are teaching teachers, they're sharing their opportunities, and we had that through last spring with the professional development that we did, and even that was showcased this last 10-day orientation period, and that model will continue. There's a lot of PD time built into the new calendar as well. And so times will be allotted specifically over the upcoming weeks, specifically to have this opportunity to share best practices. And best practices will be shared not only within grade level and within building, but also cross district as well. And we'll use our website as a way of showcasing that as well.
I'm going to see if I can put a couple of, I'm sorry.
I just have a follow-up too in the sentiment. As we share best practices, right, we'd like to think there will be some who are going to be trying some flavor of asynchronous. So, hey, a few folks have tried over the next couple weeks and they can share that experience. Is that a reasonable assumption that we would have some of those experiences?
100%. I've heard from a number of teachers specifically either looking for a specific tool that will enable that, or just saying, look, our department's looking to incorporate this somehow. Can you help us? And so what goes in is I go in with the tech integration team, really thinking about how to leverage that learning. And once we work with the teacher, that will be shared with others again. One thing that's been really, truly special too is the opportunity to share what's best practices happening in the elementary school, sharing with the high school and vice versa. And that cross-pollination is happening as well.
Okay. I'm going to see if I can kind of combine some of these. And again, people who have not put their full name in, if you could please do that, I appreciate it. So Denise DePiro, when you speak of high school students having a check-in, exactly what does that mean? The 5-minute check-in is vague. Is that for each class, while it's happening, or once a day for 5 minutes? Okay. She asked it 20 minutes
Yeah,
ago.
so it's,
How about the spirit of the check-in? What's the, what we spoke about before?
well, so the check-in happens at the beginning of class, and it has to be at least 5 minutes, but it can be longer if the teacher so chooses. And it is once for every class within the 2 remote days. So if it's the example I gave last time, if it's cohort A, then those check-ins could be either Thursday or Friday.
Okay, this is Jill Fedor. Thank you for clarifying that impact bargaining was the reason for not knowing the remote plan until this week. While I'm concerned that our children will not have teacher contact 2 days a week, I'm wondering about the phased reentry plan to full in-person learning. In the spirit of challenge success, would you consider the oldest students, high school, as important as the youngest learners in returning first? I don't think, just to quickly say, I don't think that there is a hierarchy of need for education across any, that all of our kids are equal, but I kind of understand what you're saying, Jill. Jeff, do you want to? Okay. So, all right. I'm going to just kind of evaluate one. Bob, can you please put in your last name? Because I would very much like to answer that. Joanna Hilbert, you originally proposed synchronous learning for the remote days. So while robust learning can happen in an asynchronous model, you obviously prefer synchronous as optimal for our students. Is there a path to get back to synchronous as soon as possible? Do we feel that we've covered that, or?
Yeah, Joanna, I think that's, something that when we put in the plan, it was looking at synchronous, asynchronous, or we didn't say would, or we really wanted to make it an option or open for people. And I think that's where we are. We have the door open for teachers through the training to do that. And I think that's, again, in the springtime, there was very little connection. Now at the high school, there is the extra help that happens on those remote days. There is the check-in that happens during the class period, so there's more structure. So that was more feedback that we got, that on those remote days, kids needed the structure. So that feedback and that check-in from the teacher happens during the exact same time in the same period that child is in class. So that's where we are, and that's where we started. But it's no at least 5 minutes, and it can certainly go longer than that if the teacher chooses.
Bonnie Morissette asked essentially the same question, so I'm going to dismiss that. And Bonnie, if I'm misreading that, please feel free to submit it again. Yuri Kravanich, and I'm sorry for butchering that if I did, if district goes full remote for the second term, will students in cohort D be able to join?
So that's something that we're looking at and working on, because it really depends on if we go full remote for a long time or go full remote for a short time. So we've been told by the state that we have to be prepared for a short-term shutdown of remote for 2 to 3 weeks, or if it's a long-term, then we'd make a decision around that. But it's really depends on how long the shutdown would be.
Okay. I'm trying to get through Jacqueline White. It seems unclear to me if there is an intent to have Zooms live stream on remote days beyond Wednesday in the future. I just want to make sure we haven't answered this one already. My apologies. This is a parent, this is Jacqueline White, and essentially she is making a comment that she realizes teachers need time to learn the tools, but she doesn't understand how other schools are doing it effectively, but we can't, which I don't think is actually perhaps the reality, although we all hear things about other schools and kind of how they're doing things better. But I think they hear the same thing about us sometimes. Even a couple of Zooms per day to help engage the kids would be helpful. Otherwise, the burden is entirely on parents, which I hear and understand, to teach, monitor, and care. And you disappeared. That's okay. All right. But I think I understand that it does require a lot of support to do remote learning. I don't know that it would require any less support to do streamed, or and we certainly wouldn't want to do that all the time. Let's see. Kathy Costello, will middle school and high school students still be receiving homework? I think I could say yes to that, as my own kid had homework today. But across the board, they still would receive homework, right? There's no policy against that. Right, Jeff? Okay, thank you. This is a question, Cecilia, about assessment, and we have talked about that. We will be doing regular assessment, and we are held to the same frameworks that we would be held to in any other year, so continuous. Oh, Leo, could you stop dismissing just for a second, because I'm having a hard time tracking. Will cohort D be getting more live streaming than the hybrid A and B students? I'm sorry, and that's
Well,
Andrea
I
Sullivan.
would think that if you're in a virtual academy, that's kind of a natural thing to happen, I think. Right?
Okay.
I mean, so virtual, there's absolutely no in-person at all. So everything that they do would be virtual with a teacher. So I would assume that that would probably happen.
Okay, thank you. Dave Blake, the reopening plan as well as Christine's presentation highlighted expectations for remote day instruction, synchronous, asynchronous, or student-directed activities. Christine emphasized instruction. What should our expectations be for the allocation of time across these different learning vehicles? Could I rightfully say that that's an evolving process? Yeah, you know, it is actually, I totally get where you're coming from, Dave. But you know, it's day 2. So, or tomorrow is day 2. So we will constantly be kind of reassessing this. Wendy Librand, if my child doesn't have questions in the morning, is the Go block mandatory? And I assume you're talking about the remote days, because the in-person days, it's
Yes,
pretty
that's a
clear it's
check-in mandatory for kids, yes.
Okay, so yes, it is mandatory on remote days as well.
Just as 2 above there, Lauren.
Lauren Burgill, how
Yep.
do you expect elementary students to work independently on remote days? When should I expect my elementary student to receive 9 hours of teacher instruction during remote learning? I think we answered that this is, I mean, we developmentally kind of like work with kids. I mean, you're going to explain this better right now, but we do have kind of developmental expectations about what they can do or not do, and we need parent partners, which is difficult. Do you have other information to add to that, or is it just, it's difficult? It is, I think we fully acknowledge that this virus has brought hardships to us in our country and across our schools and across our state in ways that we would never have anticipated 6 months ago.
Jess, I do want to say that the digital notebooks that were developed across K-8 is also meant to support student learning and try to support them as independently as possible as well. And so they are developmentally, they are developed keeping in mind the child's developmental age and their level in mind. So the level of independence is going to be far greater for 3rd, 4th, 5th graders than, for instance, kindergarten or grade 1 students.
Okay. And just to kind of hook on to that, there's a question here from Emily Hatton, who wanted to talk to you specifically, Christine, about how do you envision kindergartner, 1st grader, 2nd grader learning how to read, write, and spell asynchronously?
Great question. Thank you for asking that. It's something that we are focusing on. We talk about quite a bit. We've investigated and we have implemented a number of digital learning tools such as Lexia to focus on that as well. And we're thinking, we are working directly, our literacy specialists are thinking about ways that they can maximize their time while they're in the face-to-face, and thinking about ways that they can use either the digital notebook as well as different digital tools to help support that as well. But there's a number of different applications that are on the iPad or the Chromebooks that can support that.
Eleni Simino, can it's getting late. Can elementary specials, especially language, but possibly art and music, be set up so students get this streaming interaction on their virtual days from specialist teachers, offering more structure? Again, that's feedback, and we can certainly kind of take it back, but that will be part of our assessment, kind of around the continual assessment about what works best. Let's see.
Brian.
Brian Proofrock, we all knew that there would be a remote aspect of this months ago. Why were teachers not given technology and training before 10 days ago? Seems like a big miss if that is the primary reason being given for lack of remote instruction. I think that we've
I'll certainly address
covered
that.
that.
If you like. So we did know there was a remote aspect. That was part of our plan that we submitted in August. I don't know if you know anything about what's going on with technology right now and access to it, but in order to get, there are many districts right now that are waiting until December to get Chromebooks for both teachers and kids because the state had to intervene and do a massive order where people ordered from the state because they had the only buying power to get it because there's so many issues around technology ordering. We ordered our MacBook Airs as soon as we were able to access the CARES Act money to do that. So once we did that, we put our order in and we got them actually sooner than what they said. They told us we were going to get them by the end of September, and we got them about a week and a half ago. So it's a supply and demand issue where you really can't get some technology because the whole world's trying to buy it at the same time. But we were very lucky to get it before school started. So we were thinking about it, we just couldn't get it in time.
Okay, Mara Girardi, she'd like to follow up on her previous question. It's not clear to me if a teacher is 100% remote, why her students can't receive 5 days of remote teacher instruction. I assume that this is referring to kids who are in 2-day hybrid cohorts.
I think the issue around that is the technology setup, the way we have the camera that we have for the teacher and for the students, that it wouldn't be at this point something we could do by having them live stream in. We have a 360 microphone in the classroom. We have a camera in the classroom so the teacher can see all of that. The teachers are projected up on the board. The kids are also up on the board so they can see. So we're not able to, at this time, loop the remote kids in on that particular scenario.
And the other thing I want to kind of say to that is that there is a little bit of an equity issue there. I've heard many comments across the board around parents being concerned that there won't be an equitable distribution across subject matter or whatever. And so we always do have to really think about how we are providing instruction. I am not saying that remote zooming in by a cohort 5 days a week or not would be better or worse, but it does seem to me that it takes more investigation than just saying that doing it 5 days a week seems like a good idea. We are really constantly kind of investigating what our best practices are. So, but thank you. Rich Rosen, why are some high school teachers allowing kids to sit in on Zoom on the home days and others are not? So again, this is an equity question. Did I hear someone say the union rules say you cannot force this? Why would the teachers not want to stream the class so the kids can have continuous learning? So I think that we've really covered that. Can we generally agree on that? Yeah, okay. Matt Silva, what is the source of best practice? That's a pretty general question, but I think it's a valid one, just in general terms. It's data-backed.
Yeah, absolutely. We collect data all the time. Again, I just highlighted some of the examples of the focus groups, opportunities to meet with teachers, just parent feedback, et cetera, and really identifying what works for kids. In addition, the instructional technology team works with and identifies best practices that are happening in their building there, and they're sharing with others. They also interact with different tech integration specialists across multiple districts, as well as I work with other districts as well, really identifying what works and bringing it back. Last thing is that there's a lot of information and research that is out there as well, that's happening in higher ed, et cetera, and that is folding back into our district as well and being shared with our teachers.
So I want to say to Nancy Kupferman, if you could simply ask your question again, because we didn't have your name and it may have been dismissed by mistake, or it could have been a repeat of other questions. We aren't dismissing that many of them. So This is Bob Howard. If a child is struggling with the kind of learning, what is the plan so they won't be left behind? So if a child struggles with independent learning or with even synchronous learning, quite frankly, learning from a screen, how will we kind of adjust that to make sure that they aren't being left behind within this model?
Sorry about that. This is a focus for us, and we identified that was a real issue. So we are identifying that through a variety of different ways. We have the testing that I mentioned before in terms of the K-5 standardized testing and identifying students who are falling behind and providing them supports. Also having teachers talk about students within departments as well as with guidance counselors, et cetera, identifying students are falling behind. Keep in mind that grades are being captured this year. This is different from the spring, as well as other forms of assessment. The other part is things like the Go Block and advisory, et cetera, are ways for us to identify if a student is present, if they're active, are they participating? So there's multiple different ways that we can catch whether or not a student is engaging and how best we can support them.
Pamela Wall, when will the high school writing center be available, if at all, and why are teachers not using slide decks or digital notebooks at the high school level? Students used to get slides from many teachers and subjects pre-COVID at the high school. I do know, actually, I just got an email today that they're starting the high school writing center virtually. Is that correct? I think, yeah.
You got the top one, Jess.
Yeah. Prioritizing. So, and then there's the digital slide decks question at the high school level. Do we have thoughts or questions about that?
The teachers at the high school we did a focus group. We worked specifically with a group of teachers across multiple departments looking at best ways. And we actually gamed out and we tried the slide deck within the high school model. And what was found out that with a number of teachers found that the way that they're using Google Classroom now is a way that they can leverage that learning in a very similar way. So the decision was made to make Google Classroom universal, standardized practices there, and that has the same impact as those slide decks.
This is Anna Amundin. In the event we need to switch to full remote learning because of an upsurge in COVID, will we as a school system be prepared, and will we teach via live stream at that point? So, you know, do we just throw out the whole kind of remote model that we've been doing up to that point on those 2 days and then go straight to live stream if we go remote?
So I'm assuming that live stream and Zoom are the same, that we're,
I think that's,
okay.
yeah, we
Yeah,
can
so
use them
that's,
synonymously.
of course, we're ready to do that if we go for remote.
Okay. All right, I want to make sure, Leo, can you look at the Jacqueline White question and see if we answered it already? So we'll, okay, and
Yeah, we've discussed
so
this.
there are
Yeah.
a lot of streaming questions that we've kind of already answered. It's not that we are not.
I think so many people are confused that I think it's just worthy if we just do it again. I'm sorry, but
Well, I mean,
Just
there's,
outline K5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. Live interaction across the computer expectations, I think would that address, I think, what the big question is?
I think that people are, yeah, I would say that people are saying, why is my child not being taught kind of full-time by the teacher who would be presenting a lesson, much as they would be presenting a lesson in a classroom? Which I think is an interesting question, because one of the things that you notice if you're in a modern classroom is how much time the day is kind of broken into chunks, right? So the instruction, there's kind of modeling, and then kids go off and do projects. They do projects together. So there's not a huge, you know, like varying throughout different classrooms, and you guys can certainly speak to this, that you would frankly have a lot of dead time. You know, like that model of classroom instruction does not work particularly well if you've got, you know, 10 or 15 kids sitting at home because they're kind of twiddling their fingers saying, okay, but I can't do that project. I can't do this. So I think that that's the meaningful part of remote instruction when we're talking about that, is how do we make that meaningful instead of just sitting in front of a computer? And you can be engaged often, but you cannot necessarily teach and stream constantly and expect to get the same results as you would in a more fluid classroom situation. I mean, I think that is that generally reasonable? And am I kind of making that succinct enough in terms of our reasoning?
Yeah, absolutely. Curriculum instruction is flexible and it's really contextually based. So that is to really speak to what you're saying in terms of to have a peer editing activity where you have teachers, you have students editing each other's work, to have that just streamed would be sort of dead time. For instance, that's just one example.
Yeah. So,
can I make a comment?
please.
Okay. And I think that, you know, we've definitely addressed and answered, and Christine has talked us through the best practices and whether it be live streaming or not. What I think, and again, day 2 here, so we're all still learning. But what I think is driving a lot of this is the confusion, specifically in the cohort that was remote, and mostly for older children that really need some clearer expectations of what it is that they're going to be doing while they're remote. Here it is, you need 15 hours on your 3 remote. How are you going to fill them? They need the structure and the guidance, which hopefully will come out in the next couple days, weeks, but assurance that there will be that guidance. I know that there'll be the 5-minute check-in eventually, which will guide them to it. But as of right now, there was a lot of uncertainty of, I'm not in school. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know how to fill this time period. I have assignments. They're not due till next week. I kind of want to blow everything off and go back to sleep, but I'm supposed to be in school. The parents are saying, yeah, I thought this was going to be different. We just need some clearer cut expectations coming from the individual schools saying, this is what you're supposed to be doing. It's flexible, so you can do it on your own time. However, this is what it is expected of you. It needs to be spelled out a little bit more.
And I think that's kind of I think you're right in saying that that's also the kind of mystery of having your first 2 days of school be entirely remote. And that's, you know, it's
just
scaffolding kind of
for the students. Even, I mean, juniors and seniors are quite independent, but they've never been quite independent during a pandemic where they're forced to be learning at home. So everyone needs that scaffolding of, here is what we need to do and how to the expect by this date. Yeah. Correct. Just a little bit more hand holding for everyone, really.
Yeah, I think this exercise, I thank Christine for going through that, and I definitely want to go through all the questions, but I think if each school can address, you know, their population in a very personal way, I think that would go really long with the parents to be heard and addressed by department chairs as a, you know, as an individual school. I think that would go a long way.
Teachers themselves, I understand elementary teachers have already reached out and they've even conversed with the parents. I don't think it would be too much to ask high school teachers to reach out to the parents of their students. Kind of, this is what I plan to do. This is my plan. I'm thinking I'm going to do my check-in on this day, just so we're all, you know, on the same page. You develop the relationship with the parent, and nobody's confused, anxious, or.
Well, I think that's part of equipping the parent as the learning coach in this structure.
Right.
They absolutely need to be kept in that loop, and you know, if we are using Google Classroom, you know, there is that ability to activate the Guardian email. There's a Guardian communication tool in Google Classroom that will send them updates as, you know, as things get posted to keep parents informed. of what's, what is being posted and asked.
Well, but I mean, I don't want to
As well.
create helicopter parents, but what let me add, I don't want to create helicopter parents that are saying, you didn't turn this in, because that is a very important fundamental part of executive functioning in high school.
Yes.
Like, you can't do that for your kid. However, I can't I can't get my kid out of bed in the morning.
Well, maybe not the guardian
when
part, but
he says, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Why do I need to be up at 7:30? I don't have a Zoom, and
I think you're describing my entire high school career, Megan.
I think I'm describing everybody's day that was
I think
remote.
that people are really agreeing with you. I'm seeing a lot of
Okay.
agreement with that in terms of
Yeah,
like
so
looking
to Megan's
at
point
that.
as well, a lot of high school teachers have reached out to families, and it's been so appreciated because that instills confidence and they're in it, along with them. So I think you're right. That's absolutely needed.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of look through these questions right now to make sure that we're not necessarily missing anything, but it is getting extremely late.
Well, I would say that, listening to the feedback tonight and the questions that I still see there, I think it probably makes sense to work with the high school team a little bit to do some sort of webinar Q&A, much like the elementary principals did earlier this week with parents to try to, because some of these are granular questions in terms of scheduling and AP, things that, that they deal with on a daily basis. And it makes more sense for them to answer these questions than to have it in this forum. So I have a meeting tomorrow with Robert and others. So I'll certainly make sure that we get something scheduled soon so that folks have some feedback directly from them and they get a sense of, what some of these answers that are very granular in terms of and personal to their own children. I think it's important to get the right answers around that. So, Christine and I sometimes have a 30,000 foot view on some of these things. And I got a question today about someone's schedule at the high school. I don't know any superintendent that can answer that question. So I will gladly get that together and get information out to the high school parents, because it seems like that's where the questions are coming from.
All right, I think that at this point, what I would like to do is, because so many of these have to do with the kind of decisions around live streaming. And I think that we've kind of answered that throughout about why we wouldn't live stream the full time. I think that we could probably put up the presentation that you did. And I have kind of time markers on the video around different times that you started to address various issues. And maybe that's something we can put on the website or something that I can construct tonight. We can try to put that out there.
I mean, I really think it's something that parents need to have a conversation webinar with the high school administration.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
really
that's
do.
also true.
I mean, I
just
think
wanted
it's,
to make sure.
we had that, the three elementary principals did earlier in the week, and it was very well received, had almost 300 parents on it. And I think that it's something we probably need to do here, so that's a lot of these answers will be answered and can be answered at that time. It makes sense to do something like that.
Okay.
Because if not, we'll,
So I'm going to kind of shut down the questions at this point. And certainly it is not because of the validity of your questions, but simply because it is almost 10 o'clock at night. We do actually have more to our agenda. If you would like to, again, reach out to your principals, reach out to your teachers. If they're granular things, you can reach out to any one of us or the district by emailing. You can kind of reach out to the central office by emailing reopening2020@email.medfield.net. And we can certainly shoot your question to whomever can answer it in the best way possible.
And I think if it's a high school specific question around scheduling, around all these issues that we're talking about
Right.
tonight, then you want to save that for when we have the open forum or whatever we call it with the high school folks. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. But I noticed that our participation is dropping way down because we're exhausted. And I think we should probably move on with the agenda. Do we generally agree with that? All right. Okay. So, I have almost forgotten where we were. We need to talk about, we need to move on to old business, right? Donations?
Donations, if you want me to start there.
Yeah, why don't we just go from there? Bing, bang, boom.
And I would ask that we table the merge because
Okay.
those folks that are involved out. So
Yeah.
we could table that to the next meeting. So we have donations as we typically do almost every month. So I ask you to accept these following donations. $500. I asked you to accept these donations. We have these almost at every meeting. $500 from Anton's Cleaners Caring Kids Charity to the Medfield High School gift account. $209.99 from Stop and Shop A+ School Rewards to Blake Middle School account. $6,389.95 from the Wheelock PTO for shelving for the Wheelock Library. $336.04 from the Stop and Shop A+ School Rewards to the Wheelock School gift account. $500 from Park Street Books to Wheelock School gift account. I ask that you approve those donations as presented this evening.
Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second? All right, take a vote. Anna Mae O'Shea, Brooke,
Yes.
Tim Knight,
Yes.
Megan Glenn,
Yes.
and Tim, it's late, I'm so sorry, Leo. Leo Brim,
Yes.
and Jessica Riley, yes. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. And how about a quick Dale Street School project update? We will not be taking public comment on this, just to let people know. It's kind of in the hands of the selectmen at this point, so.
Sure. So we had our school building committee meeting yesterday. The big agenda item, I think, on that was the site selection. So we had gone through either the Dale Street site or the Wheelock site, shared the evaluation matrix that the members did, and also looked at the different options and the different schemes for the building. So it was voted to build on the Wheelock site, and it was G1 was the scheme. So if you remember some of the presentations that have gone through, it was G1, and now it's in the hands of the selectmen. So essentially with the PSR phase, the school committee chair, superintendent, and board of selectmen chair are the signatures needed to submit to MSBA. So that's where we are at this point. Great, big milestone in terms of now moving forward by having a site selection and a scheme selection, so we can really hopefully get the project moving forward. I don't know if Anna Mae or Leo have anything else to add as members.
It was a very passionate conversation about the site selection, and a lot of involvement from the community. And it was shared that we had over 40 public meetings on the decision-making process that has gotten us to a lot of the decisions and conversations to this point. So, but I think as the end result, we will continue to have a wonderful new facility to conduct our curriculum face-to-face in at some point in the future. Stressing the face-to-face, of course.
Any other questions from the rest of the members? Or are we? Okay. Then let's move on to fiscal year 21 budget. Dr. Marston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in your packet, in your materials, was the cut list that we had for FY21. One of the things that we need to do for our next meeting is calculate all the additional costs for us to open up in the hybrid model. As you've seen probably in your listserv, districts have been spending a lot more money because we had to hire additional staff, whether it was to cover leave of absence or having additional teaching assistants to assist at all buildings, because we really can't bring substitute teachers in. So we have to have folks on staff to help out with lunch coverage and those types of things. So I think we're putting together a list of some of the positions that we've added And we have a breakdown of where we're getting the funds to spend for those. But we'll present that to you at the next meeting. But I think we have to start with a conversation at some point of, with the additional money that was allocated through Chapter 70, what positions we need to bring back. And I think that's a really important conversation that probably shouldn't start at 10:10 on a Thursday night. But I gave you the information, take a look at it, and then we'll provide information at the next meeting, which has a breakdown of all the additional costs to open up with the positions and all that. I know we typically will, every September, we do a highlight of staffing. So we need to get a handle on that as we continue to hire for aides and other positions that we've done. So we'll do that and give that to you at the next meeting. But I just want to remind you that at the last meeting, by cutting the kindergarten tuition in half by 50%, if we stay in a hybrid for the entire year, that's a loss of revenue of $250,000. So we really got to keep that into account as we go forward with the FY21.
Right. Okay, so we have informational items.
So in your packet, I included the back to school reopening guide to parents and guardians. So that was something that we sent out this week in order to update parents on where we stood in terms of the opening. I know that we've talked about that hours ago about why it was sent out at that time and why we had to wait that long. But I just want to put that in your packet so you have it. You also have in your packet, I believe you have the presentation from our discussion on racism during our professional development time, the PowerPoint that goes along with that. So that's a really good resource. Take a look at that, and happy to answer any questions at some point if you have on that. But that was a really rich conversation that we had as a district and a faculty.
Okay, and then we also have the letter to the school committee from the MCPE regarding their new fundraising, which I think sounds like a lot of fun, but I think that we also need to have, there are a couple of issues with it in terms of, there's no issue with it on the public side, but in terms of how we would help kind of display, if we were to choose to display that. We just need to kind of talk about that, I think. But you can look at the letter and then we will put it on the agenda for next week. All right, future agenda items. Obviously, we are going to be discussing the diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we need to push back, challenge success, student feedback, social emotional learning, educational stability policy review 2. I'm sure Mary would very much like to get that out of the way. And the standards-based report card feedback from Christine Power, which I'm sure she would love to get off her plate too, but it's a little.
And Tim, you requested the department chair updates at the last meeting to put on. Okay.
I think somebody said that department chairs would cover that, but I just said whoever. And again, I recognize we have to prioritize. There's a big list there. It's not, number one.
Right.
But I think at some point in time, the department chair update, that would be helpful.
Right, and let's give them a little time to kind of get some breathing room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, as we talk about agendas, I think, Christine, it's great to have the conversations around curriculum. I do see SEL on there. It might be worthwhile to have David come in, just not whether he's coming or streaming, but just kind of, hear personally how we're thinking about that. No,
and to that point, Tim, I think part of this reopening, Megan spoke about it as well, is that, at the kid level, some of these kids, where are they, and how are they feeling and who's checking in with them? And because I think a lot of parents are really worried about their kids, and because they're anxious and they're scared. And just, I'd love to know the process of how we are actually checking in with our students.
So similar to what we did in the spring where we.
Exactly, what each school is doing to really, at a student level, either guidance or what have you, what's the system they're using to check in with these kids to make sure that they're okay, and what can we provide them to make them okay, or at least to get them to a better place.
To that point, I have actually been thinking about the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey and what may be happening with that timing, because this would have been, 2020 would have been a year for that. Is that correct? It's on the even years. So has there been any kind of conversation or understanding around how, I mean, this would certainly be an off year in terms of data, but it would also be, I think, very important. We would never be able to include it within the full set, but it's certainly important data. But I don't know if that's.
Yeah, we're in constant contact with them. I mean, they're really good. They reach out. Susan Cowell is our liaison with them. So
Yeah.
They're sending us emails. They're informing us of what their plans are. So
Okay.
There's always constant.
So
contact.
it's still out there, the conversation around being able to kind of keep that data chain
Absolutely.
going in
Yes.
terms of this. Okay.
Yeah.
I find it very helpful. Okay. With that, unless anybody has anything to offer now in terms of input at the end of the meeting or kind of updates, anything? No? Okay.
More of a closing statement. I mean, I think this is probably one of the most unsettling probably times outside of the springtime because of that concern. There's a lot of worry and unknown, and I want to thank Megan for asking, for breaking it down to exactly what is needed. I think that's, the feedback was good, but I think that's exactly what people just need, is that reassurance and the continuous reach outs. As Jeff mentioned earlier, it's impossible to over communicate in this situation. And I can speak from my experience at K-5 in the last 3 or 4 days about who people have reached out, the teachers have reached out, the expectations have been set for the virtual days, checklists were made, and so that communication has been clear. And I guess, just making sure that that's the version of that's appropriate at every level is probably what needs to, obviously happen, which is obviously, up to Dr. Marston and his team to execute, of course. But I think that hits the nail on the head. The bus problems and the other things will work themselves out. I'm confident in that. And I continue to say that. So it is day 1, day 2. And, hopefully by day 7 or 8, the other things will get ironed out. But, I want to let the public know that I hear them loud and clear. I know we all do. We're hearing it right after this meeting. You'll hear it tomorrow morning at the bus stop.
I'm hearing it already.
Yeah. And and continue to ping us, please be respectful of teachers and professionals. I'm confident. I guess my last piece is, I moved to Medfield for the schools, hands down. That's why we moved here. And everyone knows that both my wife and I are educators, lifelong educators. And so I am confident that our teachers will rise to the occasion, find those best practices, and do what is really needed and to maintain those connections and help our students succeed. And they'll do it in the appropriate way at the individual levels, K to 12. And Dr. Marsden has prepared us to hire the appropriate staff, to give him the tools and his team the tools that they need to do so. So I know that it was rough for some. We had some great feedback. We had some wins and some losses today in a unprecedented situation, but I'm a forever optimist. And so I want to continue to think that we will continue to grow with this process. And that's my closing statement.
All right. I think that is all encompassing. Thank you, Leo. Anybody else? All right. And I do want to let the 84 people who are here still, thank you. If you asked a question and we did not answer it tonight, it was simply because of time constraints and not because your input, your thoughts are not valuable. But we do want to continue to answer them, and you can certainly feel free to reach out to us, okay? So with that, I will I'll ask if there is a motion to adjourn. And May, so moved. Second?
Second.
Megan, second. I'll do a roll call. Anna Mae?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Megan Glenn?
Aye.
Leo Brum?
Aye.
Jessica Riley? Aye. And the motion carries. Thank you so much. Our next meeting is on October 8th at 7:30 p.m. We'll most likely have an executive session before that probably, but 7:30 p.m. for the public meeting. Thank you.